Buonasera e scusate
Good
il mio
evening,
italiano un
and I do
po'
apologize for my quite simplistic Italian. When it comes to genocide, we often use words like barbaric or something medieval, or we could talk about psychopathy and psychic disease, sadistic approach, and these words have a certain value. Executioners are not us. It seems that it is a different race of people, another type of people. But so we need to fight, we need to condemn, but we are not questioning that. But I think that this is a big mistake. Perpetrators, executioners in genocide, and also those I have talked to, are moral persons who have done what they have done because they considered it to be right. I remember about some conversations I had with a Rwandan genocide executioner in Kigali, who said that killing people was not pleasant for them at all. And it was also very harsh physically because human beings are big animals. It takes strength and it takes time to kill them. But I said, yes, but I am a serious person. If everybody goes there, I cannot help playing my part, especially because we do that in the common interest, because we want the world to become better. And with these people, the world will never be better. These people can be the Tutsis in Rwanda, the Jews in Europe, Armenians in the Ottoman Empire, some Ukrainian peasants, and the idea that it is something rational and fair to eliminate them to ensure a better world to all the others is the basic reason for genocidal people. And it was expressed by Heinrich Himmler in some remarks in the occupied city of Potsdam in 1943 before some high officers of SS. Himmler said that we all, as we are here, we all know what it means to see 10,000 human corpses on the field. We are all the authors of a glorious page of the history of the German people that will never be written, but that we needed to have to ensure a safe world for us and for our grandchildren. However, Himmler said, we have not taken any pfennig. It was fake because they were stealing also from victims, but they were stealing not for their personal profits. They stole in the interest of the state. And indeed, some war tribunals, war courts against the SS have seized some personal accounts for what was supposed to be sent to the Reich. So, as we don't do that for pleasure, as we don't do that for our own interest, we remain moral people, moral individuals. In the history of humankind, there is a recurrent individual, the repainted criminal. It happens often that those who have committed terrible acts when they were young realize later on what they have done, and they are remorseful, they are repentant, and so they want to compensate the evil they have committed. They want to be moral once again in their own eyes, because otherwise they cannot sleep at night. And so Genocidal people have a clean conscience and they die in their beds with that. They haven't done anything bad. They have done what was needed. So it's a totally different consideration. And this is why prevention of genocide must start today, even in countries where there is no actual risk that we start killing our neighbors for any reason whatsoever. If we do not delegitimize the idea that some people can be eliminated for the common good, for progress, for the interest in the interest of humanity or of a nation, of a class. So if this idea is not condemned, absolutely, the risk of genocide is there. And this is why genocide is not something barbaric. It's rather the opposite. So one can say that genocide is the illegitimate child of enlightenment, of the idea that the state is responsible of the progress of populations administered and managed by these very states. Until the modern age, no one thought that kings and princes were responsible of the well-being of the people. It is the state that is responsible of progress. And in that, it cannot help acting if there are people who oppose progress. They are in between. They are, as Hitler said in Mein Kampf, what we feel towards the Jews is not personal, has nothing personal. A physician fighting against uh, disease does not hate vaccines and fights against a plague. He wants to support a higher form of humanity against what is threatening them. It's not something emotional. And Hitler stressed that he was against emotional anti-Semitism because it was stupid. Anti-Semitism needed to be rational because it comes from realizing that the existence of the Jews was contrary to the interest of humanity. And so the Jews were eliminated. And the very same ideas were said in Kigali, in Rwanda, said by a perpetrator that had just left prison. And he said, do you know how we called Hutsis? Nienzi, which means cockroaches. And it's a, do you think it's a coincidence? Of course. These insects want to live. Cockroaches want to live, but I want to live in my house without them. And so I'm sure that you are intelligent, you are smart. And so you agree that when you have cockroaches in your house, you need to get rid of them. The issue is that we all live in modern states, progressive states, where the idea that the state is entitled to impose limitations, to carry out policies in the name of common interest is a crucial idea. And it's important because without that, we would not have the healthcare system, education system, um, right equality. But this implies that one can trust the state. And contemporary history says that this is not always true. In Romeo Daller's book, he was the commander of Blue Helmets in Kigali during the genocide, he made a small remark. He wrote that in February 1994, they knew that the Ministry of Education in Rwanda had sent a memorandum to professors and teachers in school to ask them to make lists of students in the class depending on their ethnicity. And Danler wrote, we thought it was strange, but anything could happen, and so we didn't have time to look at that close. And the genocide started 2 months later. I try to imagine a Rwandan professor receiving this memorandum, which is bullshit, of course, but it would be the very first bullshit in an official memorandum from the ministry. And probably there's some legitimate reason for that. Probably they want to compare school results, school performance of the different groups to know whether something must not be changed or in budget or anything. It's their problem. If they ask me to do that, I'll do that. And these lists, of course, were used for killing. Children did not have any ID where they belonged to a certain group. So it was on the basis of the list that killings were brought about. Because in most cases, physically, you could not tell the difference between Hutus and Tutsis in the streets. And so these teachers made this list for the killings. So what would the solution be? Of course, one could hope that the answer is that all Rwandan teachers said to the minister to prove that there was some legitimate reasons to make this list, to prove what the reason was for all that. And we all know people who do that, and it's impossible to work with these people. We all know that a normal collaboration within an institution requires basic trust in the common interest, which is achieved by the state. And people who behave like that are fired, are dismissed, because you cannot work with them. And it is true. This is not a rhetorical expression. It's impossible to work with this kind of people. And they are the ones who save the humankind. When we finally discovered they were right. I have the honor to know some Polish writers who saved the Jews, some Jews during war, and I've seen a common trait in them. And it's not that they have some shared sociological traits, and they are simple peasants, they can be university professors, they can be politically of the left or the right wing party, they can be very religious, but also atheists. But there is something they share. They cannot be convinced that it is not their own responsibility. I remember an old man telling me, I must admit, I would never say that publicly, that I don't love so much the Jews. But this is not about this. I could not uh, permit that people were killed because they were born such and they were different. They were considered different. So probably there is some solution here. Probably if we educate our children that it is always their own responsibility, that it is not possible to go beyond and not look. So, as Liliana Segre said in this conversation, one cannot be indifferent. A Polish Jew survivor, Adrian Tushi, in Auschwitz, said that there is an 11th commandment, which is you shall not be indifferent. And this means that when you see somebody who's a victim of injustice, you help them. It means, for example, that today in Poland, along the frontier with Belarus, there are some people who are helping refugees. They have them cross, they feed them, they give them something to drink, they do not report them to the frontier guard who would expel them to try and enter Europe once again. I know this. I know these people exist, even though they don't say that publicly because they know that they would be censored by the state and probably by their neighbors too. And these people, it's not that they want to have immigration in Poland, but they could never go on living aware that due to their indifference, somebody has suffered or died. So if we manage to educate our children that indifference is always unacceptable, maybe we have another opportunity to resist to the next genocide. Probably we have an opportunity to decrease the likelihood of a new genocide. But Auschwitz, once it was created, it will never disappear. And to conclude, I would like to mention a conversation that probably many of you have already seen between Jan Karski and Judge Frankfurter. Jan Karski was a Polish clandestine and he was a witness in the ghetto, and so he witnessed with those who were not so interested in listening to him. And Roosevelt asked him to meet Judge Frankfurt, who was also an important leader of the American Jew community. And Karski said what he had to, and Frankfurter said, "Young man, I cannot believe you." Karski replied, "But Mr. Judge, I'm an official of the Polish army." No, 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 no. You haven't understood what I said. I'm not saying that what you are saying is not true. I'm saying that I cannot believe that. And it's a different thing because Frankfurter was part of this generation who could not even imagine that some men would build some factories to kill other human beings. But we no longer have this naivete that Frankfurter had. We know that it's possible because it did happen. And so we have no alibi. Thank you so much.